everyone. Welcome to Infinity Genealogy. I am your favorite genealogist, Alia Diani. I also go by AD. I want to say thank you for coming to my channel. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Please share, hit that notification bell, all those fun things. I really love the comments. So, y'all, let's have a conversation. If you are here for the first time, I want to say welcome and know that this is a space for learning, growing, and questioning. Learning, growing, and questioning. We are critical thinkers here. We question everything because we know people have tempered with information and they only want us to know what they want us to know. And so, in order to put the pieces of the puzzle together, we have to do some research, we have to do some reading. And so, welcome. If you have not been here before, there is a video that I did last time where I talked about what's on the screen, which is the reference panel, right? And I told you all toward the end that I'm going to do a little bit more research. I'm going to dig deeper into this, learn a little bit more. And as I'm reading and rereading just to make sure I fully understood everything, I looked over to my right with this related articles. And I see the Indigenous Americas Regions, researching Native American ancestors, researching African American ancestors. Two thoughts popped up in my head, right? First, I'm like, okay, why are these two groups or these groups um, being mentioned like this? Like, is it because they have a very unique history? Um, and I'm like, that could be partly true, but I'm like, why didn't they, also put Chilean ancestors or Bosnia ancestors? Like why just these two, right? So that was my question. The second question that kind of rung a bell for me or just sparked the interest is, okay, are they also giving us a subliminal message as these two groups are similar? So I was like, oh, well, let's see. So I went to the very first related articles and I thought, you know what, maybe I'm just overlooking this. I have this background, so maybe my brain is trained to see certain things in a certain way. So no, I go to Indigenous Americas Regions, then I look to the right again, and that is still there. So again, I'm like, okay, why are they linking these two groups together? Okay, I did not find the answer necessarily, but that's in my mind. And for those who don't know, I have a background in studying Indigenous American, Indian, Native American history and culture. Even just learning about it as a child, and also in graduate school, I went to go get um, my degree in higher education. I am an educator in that way. When I say education, people automatically think, primary, secondary school. No, I'm a college educator. And so while getting that degree, I also got a graduate certificate in American Indian higher education. So I focused a lot on that, plus minority serving institutions, specifically tribal colleges and universities, and historically black colleges and universities, and predominantly black institutions. And so, with all that background, all that information, I learned so much during my time. I learned about, um, Hampton University opening up its doors to American Indians at the time. I learned about all of these federally recognized tribes. And, at one point, there were thousands of tribes here on this United States landmass, right? And I'm just talking about North America, United States. I'm not even going up into Canada and all of that, or I'm not going below. I'm not talking about Mexico and everything else south. I'm just talking about the United States, okay? There were thousands of tribes. There's maps. I need to find some and share. But there are maps of thousands of tribes. But then in present day, there's, as you can see here, is 570 federally recognized tribes. And to me, is very disheartening because what happened to all those other tribes? What happened to the other 500 plus, right? And for these tribes, these 570 tribes to be federally recognized, that means they have a relationship with the US government. The US government gives them parameters of who is and who ain't. And I have to say it like that because the people who created the legal structure of the United States are white immigrant foreigners. So who are these European immigrants telling people who they are, who have already been on this landmass for hundreds and thousands of years? Who are you to tell someone else who they are? And not only you could just say it's one thing just to tell somebody, oh, you're this, you're that, but that it's laws in place, it's treaties in place, it's in black and white. And to me, I'm very passionate about this topic because it's very I don't know, it just feels very disingenuous to me. Again, you have people who have no ties to this landmass telling people who have ties to the landmass who they are and how they can be perceived and how they can be recognized. And you have to stop and ask yourself, why are um these designations so important? If you are Native American, Indian, whatever language you want to use, you are just that. Why do you need a tribal or a connection to the U.S. government in that way? Why can't you just exist as is? We know there's multiple answers to that question because, people will claim white people will take over, um, all of that. But in some of those answers, you will hear more about what this page shows. So that was a long introduction to say this page says having Native American ancestors or Indigenous American DNA does not make someone a Native American tribal citizen. So before even reading it, we know that they're saying yes, you can have this DNA, yes, but that does not mean you are enrolled in a tribe. That does not mean you are considered a citizen of these nations. There's additional. Each nation has their own requirements for membership. Please note that. So you can have the paper trail. You can say, my ancestors were Choctaw from this, and this. And they could say, yes, but we only look at the 1940 Dawes Rolls. So if you have ancestors who were on any previous Dawes Rolls, they don't count that. Okay. So anyway, let's keep going. There are differences between a person's genetic, political, and cultural identities. See, they said political. If you don't know, there has been some information out that I need to look more into. That they said the first time the term Native American was even used was the Native American Political Party. I need to do more research on that. So that's going to be a future video. Just us learning about where did this term Native American come from. But that came to mind. For me, if something comes to mind, I'm going to share it because it may resonate with you. Okay, let's move on. Native American tribal members are citizens of their nation. This is a political and cultural identification rather than a genetic identification. Native American tribal members are citizens of their nation. This is a political and cultural identification rather than a genetic identification, similar to being a citizen of any country. But remember that genetic part. In the United States, there are more than 570 federally recognized nations and over 60 state recognized tribes. There are also some regionally recognized tribal communities. Okay, so remember when I talked about earlier, there were the other 500 plus tribes when there were over 1,000. So now, out of the 1,000, only 570 are federally recognized. Then, a little bit over 60 are state, and then some are regionally. Why aren't these 60 and all these other tribes, why aren't they federally recognized? And what does federal recognition mean again? What additional resources or benefits are you getting? Okay, let me stay focused. Individual tribal nations determine the criteria for tribal citizenship, which I said earlier. To determine tribal citizenship, tribal nations determine the legitimacy and the strength of someone's family connections. For many tribal nations, this means tracing a person's lineage back to someone on tribal citizenship roles from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, like the Dawes Rolls. Sometimes a percent of blood called blood quantum is also used. Blood quantum is not how tribal nations have historically determined who was a tribal member. Rather, blood quantum was created and later used by the US government to dis what dispossess Native American people from their lands and tribal liberties. And civil liberties. It was not until the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934 that the U.S. began requiring tribal nations to use blood quantum to determine tribal citizenship. This is also important to recognize that some people have strong cultural and family connections to tribes without being a tribal citizen. There are many reasons for this, including issues of paternal consent and paper genocide. If y'all know me, if y'all have ever heard me speak at any event, I always talk about paper genocide. But it's so funny for us to see this in writing on such a popular website like Ancestry.com. So, if you have a parental, I said paternal, excuse me, if you have a parental issues and then you have papers that have been destroyed and rewritten to ice you out, this is why we sometimes as Black American people, we can't always find our native ancestry. Why? Because the documentation was destroyed, and they're telling you this right now. Moving forward, people in this position may be considered Native American because they have strong cultural and family connections. Native American ancestors claiming to be Native American because of a distant or unverifiable Native American ancestor contradicts a tribal nation's right to sovereignty. In fact, so many people falsely claim to have a Cherokee great grandmother and that is deemed to be an anthropological phenomenon. Okay, so look at this. See how they went and and told us a little bit of truth and then came back and said, but see how y'all also do this? You have a Cherokee. This is a direct target at African Americans or so called African Americans. Hence why that's that link. Remember earlier I was like, why are these connected? Could it be this little slight shade that they try to throw? My thing is this. I talked about this in my short video, Grandma's Hands. Your ancestors, your elders do not have to lie. What is the use of lying about your ancestor? Don't get me wrong, there were some paternity issues and there's some trauma around how some children were conceived. I understand that. But oral history has always been number one in our communities and in all indigenous communities. So, are you saying that our oral history has no weight? And this is a general story. This general story may be true, but what if it's not true for my little small family? My family history may contradict this because this is why knowing your people is so important. Because when you know exactly who your people are, this little comment don't ring no bell. It doesn't impact me because I'm like, well, I know my great grandmother was Cherokee. I know that. But it's the fact that they put that in here and you see a lot of like Black comedians talk about it. You see everybody else and it's like, oh, you are so proud or you're not proud of your African heritage and your African roots. And I said, okay, let's think about it. If we're talking about, there's two things we can discuss here. First and foremost, say if there were slaves that came over and they intermixed with the Native Americans, right? And that's wouldn't that Native American blood be more recent than our African blood? I don't know. That's a question for y'all, right? Or we can also look at it as we have a genetic and cultural and ethnic background that is different from continental Africans. So why can't we And so why can't we express that and be proud of our technically our intermixed history? And everyone in some capacity is intermixed, right? So why can't we share or be proud of that? Because that's who we are, no matter the circumstances. That's just who we are. That's history, right? But you forcing us to be a generic African, and we're forgetting that we talk about Africa as if it's just one country. It is a continent with 54 countries. Even within one country, there are multiple tribes. So just like we don't so-called know our Native American tribes, what tribe are we from in Africa, in Nigeria, and in Ghana? We don't know what tribe we're from there. So to me, it's a little contradictory because here it's like you just picking a tribe, you don't know who you are when you claim to be Native American. But at the same time, we're doing the same thing when we look at Africa. Oh, you're claiming all of Africa, you're claiming West Africa, but you don't know what country or what tribe. But you're just supposed to be, oh, claim Africa. Am I saying this correctly? Like, is this not a contradiction? Are you not confused? Because I'm confused. Again, they have tribes. I'm saying they, as in Africans, have tribes as well. There is no tribe that I am familiar with that I can just go over to Nigeria, as you see my ancestry where it says Nigeria is like the top place my family's from, and I have direct ancestry from. What Nigerian tribe can I go to and just be like, I'm a part of that tribe? Or can I claim that I'm Nigerian? No. But I'm forced to be, oh, you're African. You have African, you're a descendant of Africa, you're an African descendant. Okay, great. But when it comes to the Native American side, oh no, you don't have any ancestry. We're all in the United States. And you mean to tell me you don't have we don't have no intermixing at all? We don't have no indigenous blood at all? We got all this African blood and we've been gone for a long time, but we don't have no indigenous. To me, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And we claiming this tribe and this tribe, but at least we know the names of some of these tribes here. A lot of us don't have no idea of no tribes in West Africa. So, okay. I just wanted to point the contradiction there of how we're forced to look at Africa, but we look at Africa as a whole place instead of just a region or a country, and we're forced to just be that, but we never have to claim or state what tribe we're from or prove that we're from there with any documentation, with any tribal affiliation. But when it comes to the Native American side, we have to prove, show paperwork, show this, show that. And even if you do show that, it's like, oh, you're being anti-black, oh, you're being anti-African, you're not proud of who you are. Well, this Native American ancestry is a part of who I am. You see that? Okay, let's move on. Okay, this does not mean that the presence of Native American ancestors is not important, is not an important feature of someone's family history. Let me read that again. This does not mean that the presence of Native American ancestors is not an important feature of someone's family history. However, there is a crucial difference between the claims I have Native American lineage and I am Native American. Okay. So keep that in mind when they say I am African. That's why some people say I'm a descendant of Africans. I'm an African descendant. Okay, cool. Instead of saying I'm African. I got it. So we gotta play linguist. It's a semantics and a linguistic battle here. Indigenous American history, American DNA. So see how I start off with Native American, and now we go to Indigenous American. Okay. Although the criteria may differ between nations, no tribal nation considers Indigenous American DNA to be a legitimate claim of citizenship. In part, this stems from traditional beliefs that kinship networks, family connections, not ancestral regions or DNA, determine who is Native American. So even if you have the DNA, you're not considered Native American. You're not considered indigenous. Interesting. While Indigenous American DNA cannot be used to determine tribal citizenship, it can be vital in assisting Native American people who were separated from their tribal communities through forced adoption or the residential school system. The Act of American Indian Affairs, the Association for American Indian Affairs reports that as many as one third of all Native American children were separated from their tribal communities between 1941 and 1967. The Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 attempted to end the forced adoption of Native American children, but they were still separated from their tribal communities even after it was signed into law. Today, Native American children still make up a disproportionate part of the U.S. adoption and foster care system. DNA could help Native Americans affected by adoption and foster care reestablish their family connections. For reasons that include tribal sovereignty, Ancestry does not break down DNA results by tribe, but we do provide an approximate geographical region, the Indigenous Americas. So again, even if it were to show up on your DNA breakdown, your ethnic breakdown, they can't even tell you what tribe you're from. All right, results are not broken down by tribe. While our reference panel includes a large number of Native Americans, many people carry DNA from multiple Native American tribes as well as non-Indigenous DNA. This can make it difficult to accurately distinguish between different Native American tribes. Okay, so why is this so hard? It's hard to do the Native American tribes, but it's not hard to do the African tribes when there's so many to distinguish from, and we might be a combination of both. That's what I'm so confused right now. So it's so hard to do one, but the other one is just y'all can just do it. And even the what y'all have done, the percentages are low. So you're not even getting all the tribes and the different ethnic groups and breakdowns in Africa, in West Africa. Okay, move on. Also, many Native Americans have some European ancestors. Ancestry selects only the parts of a person's genome that we identify as being Native American. So again, someone else is telling you, they looking at your DNA and they get to determine what is Native American. So we essentially stitch together small sections of whew, stitch together small sections of indigenous DNA to construct bigger genomes. Why are you stitching it together? Why you just can't be what is? Okay, move on. Additionally, some Native American communities have limited participation in genetic research. This is due in large part to centuries of extractive and exploitative research practices that have rightfully led to distrust among Native communities. To provide a tribal level of identification, Ancestry would need more genetic information from these communities. But for reasons relating to tribal sovereignty, it also might not be ideal to break ancestral regions down by tribe. Y'all, okay. I'm trying to get through this. How much more we got? Oh, okay. Okay, let me stop talking so much. But I just have to say these things. Like, I'm in disbelief. Okay, why the Indigenous Americans may not appear on your ancestral regions. It's possible to have Native American ancestors, but not have the Indigenous Americas region in your ancestral regions. This is because there's a difference between lineage and DNA. This is why we do genealogy, baby. A child receives 50% of a person's DNA, but they typically do not receive 50% of each parent's ancestral regions. This is due to the randomness of genetic inheritance. For example, a parent who is half Nigerian and have Indigenous American DNA may pass more of their Nigerian DNA versus to their child or vice versa. Excuse me. Over generations, the randomness of genetic inherited results in more DNA being passed down from some regions and others being lost entirely. Mm. So every time there's a point being made, I'm just gonna say because I'm trying to get through this right now. I might have to do a part 2 and part 3. I didn't want to. I wanted to do all in one video, but okay, moving on. To further illustrate, let's say you have a Native American great grandmother who has 25% Indigenous American DNA. Although about 12.5 of your DNA comes from your great grandmother, you may not have inherited her indigenous DNA. Alternatively, you may have inherited such a small amount that it does not appear in your DNA test. So this is probably directly referring to me from at least my mother's father's side, right? The Ancestry test surveys over 700,000 locations in your DNA. Really? Let me confirm that because before I thought I saw 100 and something thousand. Now it's saying 700,000. But that might be something else. I want to make sure I verify. But is still a chance that we missed evidence of Indigenous American DNA. Pause. So we went through this reference panel, right? Oh, these are the sample sizes, but it's still a total. So these are the sample sizes. And then this said the locations. So how are they different? So are these just the regions? Okay, hold on. So they tell the world overlapping 107 regions and groups. Then how we get 700,000? Do y'all see that? Am I tripping? Please put in the comments. Okay, anyway, but there is still a chance we miss some indigenous DNA. This is because you may have inherited genetic markers that Ancestry DNA does not use to identify Indigenous American ancestral regions. So again, you may have it, but they don't pick it up because it's not in their system or they don't look at it as indigenous. That's crazy. Additionally, some Native American communities are underrepresented in genetic research, like they said, due to mistrust and all of that stuff. They already said that up there. The presence of indigenous DNA does not make someone more or less Native American. Tribal citizenship. Tribal citizenship. Tribal citizenship is determined by tribal nations, not by DNA. Okay? Different DNA results may produce different. Different DNA tests may produce different results. One testing service may show you have Indigenous American DNA, while other test servings, do not. So again, they talk about the 700,000 locations, but there's still a chance that they missed some. This is because you inherited different markers. Basically, they're repeated information now. Additionally, some Native American communities are underrepresented. So this is the third time they have talked about this mistrust and been exploited. The markers in DNA Ancestry has picked are balanced to help distinguish global populations as much precision as possible. The markers Ancestry DNA has picked are balanced to help distinguish global populations with as much precision as possible. However, other testing services may use markers that provide a different representation of ancestral regions. So that's why for those who have taken like 23andMe, Ancestry, MyHeritage, all of those results are different because they all use something different to determine. That's another reason why I'm not the biggest fan of always taking these DNA tests because again, they get to define it for however They define it for you. And a lot of things are defined for us, right? But you know your grandma is your grandma is your grandma. Your grandma don't change. Your great grandmother don't change. So, okay. How do I make sure that my DNA isn't used for research? Oh, it keep going. You own your genetic information. Ancestry cannot use it for research without your consent. And even if you've given Ancestry consent in the past, you can withdraw at any time. If you do not consent to having your genetic test or DNA used for research, it won't be used for research by our internal science team, and certainly not any external research partners. Non consented samples may be used by Ancestry science team to improve Ancestry products, but those data are not published. How can we verify that? So if I tell you don't use my stuff and you're still using it, but you go tell me, okay, I'm gonna use it, but I ain't gonna publish it. So what's the point of doing the research? The research is to create it to be shared and inform and to educate. So you may not publish the research, but you're using those findings to inform next practices and next other products. That means you're still using it. It's just not public information. Okay. Whew. Ancestry's policy is to not cooperate voluntarily. Oh, law enforcement requires they follow legal process to, access DNA data. Okay. How do I volunteer? Okay, we're not gonna get into that because I know what this is. But yeah, so what's this? Out of all of this, they said the same thing three times about the mistrust. They told us in one moment, yeah, you can have blood, but it's also different. And then, oh, just because you have DNA, you may have DNA, but we don't know about it because it's not in our system. Or you just there's a difference between I have Native American lineage and I am Native American, but also you can have it, and having more or less doesn't make you more or less indigenous. It's all over the place, y'all. Just like me reading, it's all over the place. But all right, y'all. Again, I was gonna go a little bit further, but I'm gonna do another segment of this because I did not want this video to be that long. I had no intentions of the video being this long. However, it is what it is. We're gonna do another part, and I will talk to y'all later. Thank you all for being here with me through my craziness, through all of my, just doing what I do, questioning, asking questions, and trying to learn more and understand the world around me as well as myself. So, love y'all. Peace. Thank you.